So continuing the upper atmospheric circulation part of our notes, I'd like you to look at the animation here. It says HTTP, GOO, etc. It's like 2 to 3 minutes long. The audio is really bad on those, and the whole purpose of those animations is to be self-explanatory. So I'm not going to go through that with you, but just pay special attention to what you see there. The gist of it is the Rossi waves are these big up and downs, as I'm mousing now down on this image, and they're getting more and more extreme. And sometimes they create very, very persistent and extreme weather in certain places, whether it be heavy rainfall in a hurricane zone or a prolonged cold outbreak somewhere in the winter or spring or even late fall. So these sorts of weather patterns we seem to be getting locked into, droughts, all kinds of things. Um, so, as I've suggested in the remarks here. Um, so this is something that seems to be part of the new kind of warmer Arctic that we have, and strangely enough, the warmer Arctic uh, still can come into the middle latitudes. When it does, it feels very, very cold. And the probabilities in recent years of having major Arctic air outbreaks in the middle latitudes, such as the United States, lower 48, are seem to be higher than they were even some 10 years ago. So even though the Arctic isn't as cold, the fact that it's less cold makes it even more likely to invade our areas as these waves that bring in that Arctic air. For example, Arctic air would be down in this area here. These higher amplitude waves seem to be more common and persistent. So this is a quick look at the cross section of the global circulation. So you've got the rising warm air over the equator, hot air, thermal low, and some of that sinks over the subtropics. Some of it will kind of keep going. And so we have the sinking air wherever high pressure is. Oops. And there's also going to be sinking air over the Arctic. You can see that pattern here as well. And the westerlies coming out of the subtropical high in one direction and the trade winds in another. So just a quick kind of review of that. So jet streams, there's a couple parts to them typically, and that little animation you just looked at talked about that. So there's a polar one and a subtropical one, and the velocity of the winds can be pretty high up in these areas, say upwards of 25 to 35,000 feet, where they're kind of concentrated. So local winds now. So we're shifting gears. We've been talking about the broad global circulation, and there's also what we call local winds, and those aren't the westerlies. They're not the trade winds. They're not the polar easterlies. They're winds that develop due to local surface differences in heating and cooling, and they develop best in what are otherwise clear and calm conditions. So, in a day when there's a big, strong westerly wind blowing, they won't develop very, very well. Okay, or the trade winds blowing very strong in a region, not as well either. And what clear, calm, and calm conditions give is either a near maximum solar radiation input, which can accentuate differences in heating in different places near each other, or a very efficient nighttime long wave or terrestrial radiation output going out to space, not being absorbed and then re-radiated back by the clouds. So to have maximal radiational process, whether it's at night with clear skies or during the day with clear skies. Nighttime again is radiative loss. Daytime is, of course, the solar radiation coming in. So there's some types to look at. Sea breezes are the more classic definition of these, and those happen in any large lake or ocean sea area when the interior areas heat up more than the adjoining sea surfaces, and this will cause a wind to blow onshore. So, if, for example, down the bottom of the diagram where I'm mousing now, this is a land area, and over here is a sea area. The land area warms up more, so the air rises there. You get kind of a low pressure cell. You have a circulation around, over the sea, back like this, a kind of cellular pattern. And this is a daytime thing. It's from solar heating. It just heats up the land more than the sea, creating a high pressure over the sea and a slightly lower pressure over the land, bringing that air in. The land breeze happens in exactly the same environment. It's just that it happens at night. So at night, you have that strong radiational cooling. The sea hardly cools off at all, basically nothing. And the land does cool off dramatically, So the temperature gradient between sea and land that we saw during the day, where the sea was cooler and the land was warmer, now reverses. Now it's the land is colder and the sea is warmer, so the air sinks over the land, high pressure, and off to the sea, slightly lower pressure. So you get an offshore flow, and these are nocturnal. Thermal, or sometimes known as upslope winds, happen during daytime surface heating of slopes. The movement is up, daytime. Katabatic or drainage winds happen when efficient nighttime radiation cooling of slopes forms a layer of relatively cold and therefore dense air that flows under force of gravity downhill. Okay, so anywhere where you've got efficient nighttime cooling, clear conditions, and this is especially efficient when you have barren slopes or not forested slopes, but rather like bushes, grass, bare surfaces, whatever it is, where the radiation cooling is really, really efficient. But you can also get these katabatic or draining winds off glaciers, mountain glaciers, and things like that too. Of course, it can be very cold on those day and night, um, and the air just in contact with the surface gets very cold, dense, and flows under the force of gravity. Valley winds are when winds flow up from the valleys into the heated adjoining mountains, while in the same environments, nighttime mountain winds flow downhill and down valley. We'll see an illustration of that in the next slide. You might be noticing that all of these breezes are named for where they come from. So a sea breeze is from the sea, a land breeze is from the land. Okay. Valley winds, mountain winds. Now the katabatic is more just describing downhill, but obviously it's not going to go flow downhill from a valley into a mountain. So it's still the same kind of concept. Thermal just describes heating and upslope movement of air. So that term in itself isn't necessarily telling us where exactly it's coming from. But in general, we name winds and breezes from where they come from. All right. So mountain and valley breezes um, are ones that set up in where we have like long, big valleys with adjoining side slopes. So you get a geography kind of like we see below. So you have some rising air going up the slopes, but then there's also a long valley going up. And so this will be called a valley wind going up to the mountain. And the same environment exactly is here where you have cold air sliding down. There's a nice narrative up above here that I plugged in from the site where Dennis Tassa did his artwork here. And you can look up that site here if you're interested in that. But just have a quick read through this. Pause the slide for a moment and read through that. I won't bore you by reading it for you. Okay, so now we're to monsoonal wind systems, which are kind of like giant sea and land breeze systems, except they're at a more kind of subcontinental scale. Seasonal wind changes that happen at a regional continental scale due to seasonal reversals of onshore, offshore temperature differences is the standard definition. In the summer, not surprisingly, the land heats up more than the sea, so you have onshore flow of air into large regions. So they're kind of like giant sea breezes, and almost always we could pretty much just say that when you have that onshore flow, you also have local sea breezes happening. So they're part of this larger process. The whole thing reverses in the winter, and so you have an offshore circulation, kind of like a land breeze, but it's more of a seasonal thing. Where during the cold, low sun season of the year, you have the offshore circulation. Clearly, since we're not sourcing marine air, but rather continental air, they're drier. So where do we find these? Southeast Asia, Equatorial Africa, a bit of South America are the standard monsoon areas of the world. The famous ones are South Asia, like India, Bangladesh, and Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore, those regions, and also the islands off of Southeast Asia as well, Indonesian islands, Malaysia, and so on, are important monsoonal regions. Equatorial Africa has a region that behaves this way with a very big seasonal switch, as does part of the Amazonian basin in South America. So this map just shows you a quick look of the kind of typical flow of the South Asian summer monsoon. We did see a slide on that. I think we saw something similar to that earlier. I can't remember. I've been doing so many different slides now, making sure I'm in order here. But what is happening here is you can see these are the very warm oceans, as you might imagine, the Indian Ocean in the summer, like an 86, 87 degree water temperature or even higher near these coastal areas. brings in very humid air and enormous precipitation, especially along the flank of the Himalayas here as the air rises. Okay, well, thank you. That's the conclusion for our winds systems.